dripped from the atmospheric processor's main valve as Lisa Rodriguez tightened the last bolt with her worn-out wrench. The dirty yellow coverall she wore had seen better days, just like everything else in the lower maintenance levels of Station Omega. She wiped sweat from her forehead with the back of her gloved hand, leaving a small streak of grease across her brown skin. The interstellar trading post buzzed with activity above her head. Hundreds of alien species came and went through the upper decks every day, conducting business worth millions of galactic credits. Down here in the guts of the station, Lisa kept the air flowing and the lights working. Nobody paid attention to the human mechanic who crawled through the service tunnels and fixed what others broke. Lisa had been working on Station Omega for 3 years now. She came here after Earth's government started the labor export program, sending skilled workers to alien worlds where humans were cheap and reliable. The pay was decent, but the respect was non-existent. Most aliens saw humans as barely evolved apes who were good with basic tools, but lacked the intelligence for real engineering. The atmospheric processor hummed back to life as Lisa finished her work. She packed her tools into the battered metal box she carried everywhere. The toolkit had belonged to her grandfather, who taught her everything about fixing machines when she was just a kid in Detroit. He always said that any problem could be solved if you understood how things really worked, not just what the manual said they should do. As Lisa climbed out of the maintenance shaft, she nearly bumped into 3 tall figures standing in the corridor. The Altarans were hard to miss with their crystalline skin that reflected light in prismatic patterns. Their leader, Ambassador Quill, towered over her at nearly 8 feet tall. His violet eyes looked down at her with the same expression someone might have when noticing a cockroach. "Human," Quill said, his voice carrying the harmonic undertones that all Altarans used when they wanted to sound superior. "You have contaminated our transport vessel with your primitive organic secretions." Lisa looked at the luxury transport, parked in the nearby bay. She had been working on its environmental systems earlier that day. A small handprint on the hull showed where she had steadied herself while replacing a faulty air recycler. "I was fixing your life support," Lisa replied calmly. She had learned not to get angry when aliens insulted her. It only made things worse. "The recycler was backing up toxins into your cabin air." The other 2 Altarans, both wearing the flowing robes that marked them as technical specialists, began speaking in their native language. Their words sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Quill responded in the same musical tones, and all 3 began what Lisa recognized as Altaran laughter. It sounded like crystal glasses being tapped together. "The human believes it understands our technology," said one of the specialists in broken galactic standard. "How amusing. Your species has barely learned to leave your world," added the other. "Yet you think you can comprehend systems that took our civilization 10,000 years to perfect." Lisa felt her jaw tighten but kept her voice level. "Your recycler had a clogged filter. I cleaned it and replaced the worn gasket. Pretty basic maintenance." This made the Altarans laugh harder. Ambassador Quill stepped closer, his crystalline features reflecting the corridor lights in sharp angles. "Basic maintenance. Yes, that is all your kind is capable of. Cleaning and replacing parts like trained animals." Word of the conversation began to spread as other aliens in the corridor stopped to listen. Lisa noticed a group of Vorthon traders, their slug-like bodies glistening with moisture, sliding closer to hear better. A pair of Cathari merchants, their bird-like heads tilting with curiosity, perched on a nearby railing. Even some humans working in the area began to gather. "We have a vessel," Quill announced loudly, making sure his voice carried to the growing audience. "Our greatest warship, the Starweaver. It has been unresponsive for several of your Earth months. Our finest engineers have been unable to restore its systems." Lisa had heard about the Starweaver. The massive dreadnought had been the talk of the station for months. The Altaran flagship, over 1 kilometer long and supposedly the most advanced ship in their fleet, had simply stopped working one day. It sat in the high-security docking bay like a dead whale, its crystalline hull dark and lifeless. "Perhaps," Quill continued, his voice dripping with false courtesy, "the human mechanic believes she could succeed where our specialists have failed." The crowd grew larger. Lisa could see aliens from a dozen different species gathering around them now. Some had personal translators that whispered conversations into their ears in their native languages. Others simply watched with the kind of fascination reserved for watching accidents happen. Lisa looked up at the towering ambassador. She knew this was a trap. Whatever was wrong with the Starweaver was clearly beyond the abilities of the Alterons. Best people. They were setting her up to fail publicly, probably to make some point about human inferiority. The smart thing would be to walk away, but Lisa had never been very good at doing the smart thing. "I might be able to take a look at it," she said simply. The Alteran laughter returned, louder this time. Other aliens in the crowd began making their own species versions of amused sounds. The Vorthans made wet slapping noises with their tentacles. The Cathari chirped and clicked their beaks together. "Excellent," Quill said, his prismatic skin shifting to brighter colors that Lisa knew indicated extreme pleasure among his people. "Then let us make this interesting for our audience." He gestured, to include the entire crowd of onlookers. More aliens were arriving every minute as news of the spectacle spread through the station's communication networks. "I hereby offer a formal wager," Quill announced. "If the human can restore our warship to full operational status, I will personally transfer 1 million galactic credits to her account." Gasps and excited chatter erupted from the crowd. 1 million credits was more money than most beings saw in a lifetime. It was enough to buy a small starship or a house on any of the core worlds. "And when you fail," Quill continued, "you will publicly acknowledge the superiority of Altaran engineering and the limitations of human intelligence." Lisa felt hundreds of alien eyes focused on her. She could see other humans in the crowd, maintenance workers and cargo handlers like herself, watching with expressions that mixed hope and fear. Some were shaking their heads, trying to signal her not to take the bet. She thought about her grandfather's toolkit in her hands, about all the impossible repairs she had made over the years with nothing but basic tools and stubborn determination, about the way aliens looked at humans like they were trained animals who could follow simple instructions but not really think. "Deal," Lisa said. The crowd erupted in excited noise. Quill's skin brightened even more, clearly delighted at the entertainment he was about to provide his audience. "Wonderful," he said. "Shall we proceed to the docking bay immediately? I am eager to document this lesson in the proper hierarchy of galactic civilization." Lisa shouldered her grandfather's toolkit and followed the ambassador through the crowd. Behind them, aliens of every description fell into line, chattering excitedly in dozens of languages. The news was already spreading through the station's networks. By the time they reached the high-security docking bay, half the station would know about the human mechanic who thought she could fix what the greatest engineers in Alteran space could not. The security doors slid open with a soft hiss, revealing the most beautiful ship Lisa had ever seen. The Starweaver stretched out before her like a crystal cathedral floating in space. Its hull caught and scattered the docking bay's lights into thousands of rainbow patterns that danced across the walls. The ship was easily a kilometer long, with elegant spires and graceful curves that seemed to flow like frozen music. It was also completely dead. No lights glowed from its windows. No energy patterns flickered along its crystalline surface. The ship that had once been the pride of the Alteran fleet now sat in the docking cradle like an enormous piece of expensive jewelry that someone had forgotten to turn on. "Behold, Ambassador," Quill said, spreading his arms wide as they walked across the bay floor. "The pinnacle of Alteran engineering. Quantum crystalline matrix cores, harmonic resonance drives, consciousness-integrated navigation systems. Technologies your species will not develop for 10,000 years, if ever." More aliens had followed them into the bay. The crowd had grown to over 200 beings from dozens of species. Lisa could see station security keeping them behind safety barriers, but their excited chatter filled the massive space with a babel of alien languages. Quill led Lisa to the ship's main boarding ramp. Even the entrance was a work of art, formed from what looked like a single piece of living crystal that curved and twisted in patterns that made her eyes water if she looked too long. "Our finest minds have examined every system aboard this vessel," Quill continued as they boarded. "Master Engineer Prism, who designed the Starweaver herself. Technical Specialist Harmony, who has served our fleet for 3 centuries. Scholar, Pure Tone, whose understanding of crystalline matrices is considered legendary even among our people. The ship's interior was just as impressive as its exterior. Corridors lined with softly glowing crystal formations curved away in all directions. Everything was smooth, organic, alive in a way that human ships never were. Lisa ran her fingers along the wall and felt a faint vibration, as if the ship was trying to wake up, but couldn't quite remember how. They have spent 6 months attempting to restore function, Quill said. They have replaced components, realigned energy matrices, even reconstructed entire sections from raw materials. Nothing has worked. They entered what had to be the engine room, though it looked nothing like any engine room Lisa had ever seen. Instead of pipes and wires and mechanical systems, the space was filled with towering crystal formations that rose from floor to ceiling like trees in a glass forest. Each crystal was different, some clear as diamond, others clouded with swirling colors that shifted and moved like captured aurora. In the center of it all sat the ship's heart, a crystalline sphere the size of a small house that floated in a web of energy fields. Or at least it should have been floating. Right now it sat on the deck like a paperweight, dark and lifeless. The quantum crystalline matrix core, Quill announced with pride that was only slightly diminished by the fact that his greatest achievement was currently an expensive decoration. It processes thought itself into energy, converting the pure intention of the crew into the power that drives our ships between the stars. Lisa walked around the core, looking at it from different angles. The crystal was beautiful, formed in layers like an onion made of pure light. But even without touching it, she could see something was wrong. There were stress patterns in the crystal, tiny lines that ran through its structure like cracks in ice. "Your people examined this?" she asked. "Of course," Quill replied. Master Prism personally certified the core's structural integrity. Every harmonic resonance was tested and found to be within acceptable parameters. Lisa knelt down next to the core and opened her grandfather's toolkit. The simple metal box looked ridiculously primitive next to all the crystal and light, but the tools inside had never let her down. She pulled out a small flashlight and aimed its beam into the core's depths. "What are you doing?" asked one of Quill's technical specialists. "Crude photon emission cannot reveal quantum-level structural defects." Lisa ignored him and kept looking. The flashlight beam refracted through the crystal layers, bending and splitting until it created complex patterns inside the sphere. She moved the light slowly, watching how the patterns changed. There, deep inside the core, maybe 60 layers down, she could see it. A hairline fracture, so small that it was almost invisible, but it ran right through what looked like a major structural. "No de. Found your problem," Lisa said, standing up and dusting off her knees. The Alterans looked at each other and began their wind chime laughter again. "The human believes she has discovered something our instruments missed," Quill said to his companions. "How delightful." Lisa pulled a small mirror from her toolkit and used it to redirect the flashlight beam at a different angle. "Look at layer 63, about 15 degrees from the vertical axis. There's a crack running through your primary resonance matrix." The technical specialists crowded around, their crystalline eyes reflecting the light as they peered into the core. Their laughter faded as they saw what Lisa was pointing out. "Impossible," one of them whispered. "Our scanners would have detected any structural failure." "Your scanners probably looked for big problems," Lisa said. "This is tiny, maybe caused by thermal stress or vibration over time, but it's right in the middle of your power distribution network." She walked over to one of the walls and examined the crystal formations there. They were connected to the core by hair-thin energy conduits, but those conduits were dark now. "See, the way I figure it, your core tried to process energy through that cracked node. When it couldn't maintain the proper resonance, the safety systems shut everything down to prevent a catastrophic failure. Smart design, actually." More Alterans had entered the engine room, including several wearing the elaborate robes that marked them as senior engineers. They gathered around the core, their voices rising in harmonic debates as they discussed what the human had found. Lisa pulled out her welding torch and checked its power levels. The tool was old and battered, designed for basic metal work on human equipment. Next to the elegant crystalline technology of the Alterans, it looked like something a caveman might use. "What do you intend to do with that primitive heating device?" Quill asked, his voice filled with horror as Lisa approached the core. "Fix it," Lisa said simply. The crowd of aliens behind the barriers had grown even larger. Word was spreading through the station's communication networks faster than Lisa had expected. She could see beings pressed against the bay's observation, windows watching from the corridors outside. Someone had even set up what looked like a betting pool, with odds being displayed on floating holographic screens. "You cannot repair a quantum crystalline matrix with crude thermal manipulation," one of the technical specialists protested. "The harmonic frequencies required for structural integration are beyond your species' ability to generate." Lisa ignored the protests and knelt next to the core again. She had repaired stranger things with simpler tools. The key was understanding what really needed to be fixed, not what the manual said should be fixed. She adjusted the torch to its lowest setting and aimed it at the crystal's surface. Not to melt or burn, but to create precisely controlled thermal expansion. If she could heat the layers around the crack just enough, the expansion might force the fracture closed. "Stop!" several Alterans shouted at once. "You will destroy the entire matrix." But Lisa had already begun. The torch's flame, barely visible in the bright lights of the engine room, played across the crystal's surface like a small blue star. She moved it in tiny circles, heating specific points for exactly 3 seconds each before moving on. The crystal began to glow faintly from within, not the brilliant radiance it should show when fully powered, but a soft light that seemed to pulse like a slow heartbeat. Lisa worked for 20 minutes, moving the torch with the precision of a surgeon and the intuition of someone who had spent her whole life making broken things work again. The Alterans watched in stunned silence as their greatest technological achievement began to respond to a tool their civilization would have considered scrap metal. Finally, she shut off the torch and stood back. Deep inside the core, the hairline crack had closed. The thermal expansion had been just enough to force the crystal structure back into alignment. "Now we test it," Lisa said, wiping sweat from her face. She looked around for some kind of control panel and found it built into one of the wall crystals. The interface was completely alien, but the basic principles were the same as any system. There had to be a startup sequence. She pressed what looked like it might be a power button. The core flickered once, twice, then began to glow steadily. The light spread outward through the crystal formations like dawn breaking over a mountain range. Energy conduits that had been dark for months suddenly blazed with power. All through the ship, systems came online. Lights flickered on in corridors. Atmospheric processors hummed to life. The artificial gravity field stabilized. In the docking bay outside, 200 aliens fell completely silent as the Starweaver woke up from its 6-month sleep. The ship's hull began to glow with the soft light that meant its power systems were functioning normally. Ambassador Quill stood motionless, his prismatic skin flickering between colors as his emotional control systems struggled to process what had just happened. A human mechanic with a simple welding torch had just fixed the most advanced piece of technology his civilization had ever created. And she had done it in less than half an hour. The silence in the docking bay stretched for almost a full minute. 200 aliens from dozens of different species stood frozen, staring at the Starweaver as its hull pulsed with renewed life. The soft glow that indicated active power systems painted rainbow patterns across the bay walls, a sight that none of them had seen for 6 months. Lisa packed her welding torch back into her grandfather's toolkit and closed the lid with a quiet click. The sound seemed to break the spell that had fallen over the crowd. Excited chatter erupted in a dozen languages as beings turned to each other, trying to process what they had just witnessed. Ambassador Quill remained motionless, his crystalline features reflecting the ship's glow in sharp fragments of light. His skin had shifted to a deep purple color that Lisa didn't recognize from her limited knowledge of Alteran emotions. "Impossible," he whispered, the harmonic undertones in his voice barely audible. The ship's systems continued coming online around them. Lisa could hear the hum of the ventilation fans starting up, feel the deck plates vibrating slightly as the artificial gravity generators reached full power. Through the transparent sections of the hull, she could see interior lights flickering, on deck by deck as the ship's computer systems performed their startup diagnostics. "How?" asked one of the technical specialists, his crystalline eyes wide with confusion. "The quantum matrix should not respond to crude thermal manipulation." Lisa shouldered her toolkit and looked at the crowd of Alteran engineers surrounding her. "You were thinking too complicated. The crack was tiny, but it was in exactly the wrong place. Your power distribution system couldn't route around it because it was right in the middle of a major node. So the safety systems shut everything down." She gestured toward the core, which was now glowing steadily with the soft light that indicated normal operation. "I just heated the crystal around the crack until thermal expansion forced it closed. Basic physics." "Basic physics," repeated Master Engineer Prism, who had arrived while Lisa was working. The elderly Alteran's skin was so old it had taken on a clouded, opalescent quality that made her look like she was made of polished moonstone. "You repaired a quantum crystalline matrix with basic physics." Word of the successful repair was spreading beyond the docking bay. Lisa could see more aliens crowding against the observation windows, their faces pressed against the transparent aluminum as they tried to get a better view. The betting displays showed odds changing rapidly as news networks across the station began broadcasting live coverage of the event. "The human succeeded where we failed," said technical specialist Harmony, his voice carrying tones of disbelief. "This should not be possible." Ambassador Quill finally seemed to recover his composure. His skin shifted from purple to a neutral blue-green as he activated his personal communication device. The device was built into his forearm, grown from the same crystalline material as his body, and it projected a holographic display that showed his account balance. "A wager was made," he said formally. "I am bound by the agreement." Lisa watched as he initiated the transfer. 1,000,000 galactic credits appeared in her personal account with a soft chime from her own communication device. More money than she had ever seen in her life, enough to change everything about her future. But the money was already becoming secondary to what was happening around her. The crowd in the docking bay had grown even larger, and Lisa could see beings she had never encountered before. Tall, willowy creatures that looked like they were made of living metal. Short, stocky beings covered in what looked like organic armor. Even a few representatives of the mysterious energy beings that rarely took physical form when dealing with other species. "The human mechanic," said a voice from the crowd. Lisa looked up to see a Cathari merchant pushing through the press of bodies, her bird-like head tilted at an angle that indicated extreme interest. "We have heard of your success. Our trading vessel has been experiencing difficulties with its hyperdrive motivator for several weeks. And our atmospheric processors have been running at reduced efficiency," added one of the Vorthan traders, his slug-like body leaving a glistening trail as he approached. "Our own engineers blame it on inferior human-manufactured components." More voices began calling out from the crowd. Aliens who had never spoken to a human as an equal were suddenly eager to discuss their technical problems with the mechanic who had fixed the unfixable. Lisa felt a strange mix of pride and nervousness as she looked at all the expectant faces. She had spent 3 years on Station Omega being treated like a slightly more useful piece of maintenance equipment. Now aliens who had barely acknowledged her existence were looking at her like she might actually know something they didn't. "I can take a look at your ships," she said carefully. "But I'll need to examine each problem individually. What works for one system might not work for another." This seemed to make sense to the aliens, though Lisa could see some confusion in their expressions. Many of them came from species that had developed highly standardized approaches to technology. The idea that each repair might require a different solution was foreign to beings who were used to following precise technical manuals. Ambassador Quill was still staring at his ship, watching as the final systems came online. The Starweaver's engines were beginning their startup sequence, and Lisa could hear the deep harmonic hum that indicated the hyperdrive was preparing for operation. "Your people," he said suddenly, turning to Lisa with an expression she couldn't read. "Your species has been working on our station for 3 years. Why has no one demonstrated this capability before?" Lisa considered the question. Maybe because no one ever asked us to do anything except follow instructions. You don't learn to solve problems if nobody lets you try. The Alteran's skin flickered through several colors before settling on a pale gold that Lisa thought might indicate thoughtfulness. We assumed that your lack of advanced technology meant a lack of advanced thinking. Different doesn't mean worse, Lisa replied. Just different. The ship's startup sequence was nearly complete now. Through the hull, Lisa could see the main computer displays showing green indicators across all major systems. The Starweaver was fully operational for the first time in 6 months, and it had taken her less than an hour to make it happen. Master, Engineer Prism approached, moving with the careful dignity of extreme age. Her opalescent skin caught the light from the ship's systems and reflected it in soft patterns across her robes. Human Lisa Rodriguez, she said formally. I have studied crystalline technology for over 4 centuries. I designed systems that power the greatest ships in our fleet. Yet you have shown me something I did not understand. She gestured toward the core, which continued to pulse with steady light. We searched for complex problems because our experience told us that complex systems fail in complex ways. You found a simple problem because you were willing to look for simple solutions. Lisa nodded. Sometimes the smallest thing can stop the biggest machine. I've seen million-credit manufacturing systems shut down because of a 5-cent fuse. The crowd was beginning to disperse as the excitement of the moment faded into the practical reality of returning to their daily business. But many of the aliens were exchanging contact information with Lisa, scheduling appointments to have their own technical problems examined. As the docking bay emptied, Ambassador Quill remained behind with his technical staff. They were running diagnostic scans on the ship, confirming that all systems were indeed functioning within normal parameters. The repair appears to be permanent, Technical Specialist Harmony reported. All resonance frequencies are stable, and the matrix core is processing energy at 97% efficiency, better than it was operating before the failure, added another specialist. Quill turned to Lisa, who was preparing to leave. His skin had shifted to a warm amber color that she was beginning to recognize as a positive emotional state. Human, Lisa Rodriguez, he said formally. You have proven that my assumptions about your species were incorrect. This is difficult for me to accept. Lisa slung her toolkit over her shoulder. I didn't do it to prove anything about humans. I just wanted to fix a broken machine. Perhaps that is why you succeeded where we failed, Quill replied. We were trying to vindicate our engineering philosophy. You were simply trying to solve a problem. As Lisa walked toward the docking bay exit, she could see news crews setting up their equipment for interviews. Representatives from various alien governments were arriving to investigate reports of a significant technological breakthrough. The station's communication networks were buzzing with analysis and speculation about what the human mechanics' success might mean for interspecies relations. But all Lisa really wanted was to get back to her quarters and process what had just happened. She had fixed the ship because it needed fixing, not because she was trying to start some kind of revolution. The fact that her success was apparently going to change how aliens viewed humans was both exciting and terrifying. She paused at the exit and looked back at the Starweaver. The beautiful ship was fully alive now, its systems humming with perfect efficiency. In a few hours it would probably leave the station and return to active service with the Altaran fleet. Lisa smiled and headed for the exit. Tomorrow she would start working on the Cathari hyperdrive and the Vorthon atmospheric processors. There were dozens of other aliens who wanted her to look at their impossible problems. For the first time since arriving at Station Omega, she was looking forward to going to work. 3 days after fixing the Starweaver, Lisa found herself standing in a line of 20 different alien species outside her small maintenance workshop. Word had spread faster than she ever imagined possible. The Cathari merchant who had approached her in the docking bay was first in line, followed by the Vorthon trader with his atmospheric processor problems. Behind them waited beings she had never seen before, some carrying pieces of equipment that looked more like abstract art than functional technology. Her workshop had never been designed for this kind of traffic. The small room was barely large, enough for her workbench and tool storage, with just enough space for one person to move around comfortably. Now she had aliens queued up outside like she was giving away free energy credits. The Cathari merchant, who introduced herself as Whistler, brought in a hyperdrive motivator that looked like a sculpture made of twisted metal and glowing gems. According to her, the device had been losing efficiency for weeks, dropping their faster-than-light travel speed by nearly 30%. Lisa examined the motivator under her work light, turning it slowly in her hands. The Cathari hyperdrive technology was completely different from anything she had worked on before. Instead of the crystalline matrices favored by the Alterans, this system used what looked like living metal that could reshape itself during operation. Your engineers said it was a compatibility problem with human-manufactured power coupling, Whistler explained, her bird-like head bobbing nervously. They recommended complete replacement of the interface systems. Lisa found the power coupling in question, a standard human-built component that converted raw energy into the specific frequencies needed by alien systems. It looked perfectly functional to her, but she could see stress marks around the connection points where it interfaced with the Cathari technology. "The coupling's fine," Lisa said, pointing to the stress marks. "But look at this. Your hyperdrive is trying to reshape itself around a component that was designed to stay rigid. It's like trying to connect a flexible hose to a steel pipe." She rummaged through her spare parts bin and found a length of adaptive conduit, originally designed for connecting human systems to alien power grids. The material could bend and flex while maintaining its electrical properties, something that most alien species had never bothered to develop because their technology was designed to work in fixed configurations. Lisa removed the rigid coupling and replaced it with a section of the adaptive conduit, then used a basic compression tool to create secure connections at both ends. The repair took less than 15 minutes and cost maybe 20 credits in parts. When Whistler tested the motivator, the efficiency readings jumped back up to normal levels. The Cathari merchant stared at her scanner in disbelief, then at Lisa, then back at the scanner. "How did you know to use flexible coupling?" Whistler asked. "Our engineers never considered that the interface itself might need to adapt." Lisa shrugged. "Sometimes you need parts that can bend instead of break. Humans deal with that a lot." Word of the second successful repair spread even faster than news of the Starweaver had. By the end of the day, Lisa's waiting list had grown to over 50 aliens representing 30 different species. Some had traveled from other stations specifically to bring her their unsolvable problems. The station's administration took notice. Director Hayes, the human official who managed the labor export program, called Lisa into his office the next morning. "Rodriguez," he said, looking uncomfortable behind his oversized desk. "I've been getting calls from alien governments asking about your activities." Director Hayes was the kind of man who had built his career on keeping things simple and predictable. The labor export program worked because humans were reliable, cheap, and didn't cause problems. Lisa's sudden prominence was exactly the kind of complication he didn't want to deal with. "I'm just fixing machines," Lisa replied. "Same as always. But now you're fixing machines that alien engineers couldn't fix," Hayes said. "That's causing questions about why we've been classifying humans as basic laborers." Lisa could see the problem from his perspective. If humans could solve technical problems that stumped advanced alien civilizations, it suggested that the current labor agreements might be significantly undervaluing human capabilities. "Maybe we should have been asking for better jobs all along," Lisa said. Hayes rubbed his temples like he was getting a headache. "The Alteran Trade Council has requested a formal review of your repair methodologies. They want to understand how you're achieving results that their specialists cannot replicate." That afternoon, Lisa found herself in Conference Room 7, facing a panel of alien officials from 6 different governments. The room was designed to accommodate multiple species, with adjustable atmosphere controls and seating that could be configured for everything from humanoid to tentacled body types. Ambassador Quill was there representing the Alterans, his crystalline skin reflecting the room's soft lighting. Next to him sat a Vorthon trade minister, whose slug-like body glistened with nervous moisture. a Qatari diplomatic attaché perched on a specialized chair designed for her bird-like physique. 3 other aliens represented species that Lisa couldn't immediately identify. Human Lisa Rodriguez, Ambassador Quill began formally. We have convened this inquiry to understand the techniques you have employed in repairing our advanced technologies. Lisa looked around the table at the expectant faces. I look for what's actually broken instead of what the manual says should be broken. This caused some confused murmuring among the aliens. The Vorthon minister leaned forward, his tentacles writhing slightly as he spoke. Could you elaborate on this distinction? Our repair protocols are based on comprehensive system analysis and standardized replacement procedures. Lisa thought about how to explain something that seemed obvious to her. You follow the book. If the book says problem A causes symptom B, you look for problem A when you see symptom B. But sometimes symptom B is caused by problem C, which isn't in the book. And how do you identify these unlisted problems? Asked the Qatari attaché. I look at everything, Lisa replied. I touch things, listen to them, sometimes just watch how they behave when they're trying to work. Machines tell you what's wrong, if you pay attention. The aliens exchanged glances that Lisa was beginning to recognize as the look of beings who were having their fundamental assumptions challenged. This approach seems highly inefficient, said one of the unidentified aliens, whose translator rendered his speech in a flat monotone. Systematic analysis of all possible failure modes would require extensive time and resources. Only if you don't know what you're looking for, Lisa said. But if you understand how the machine is supposed to work, you can usually spot what's not working right. Ambassador Quill's skin shifted to the pale gold color that Lisa had learned indicated deep thought. You are suggesting that intuitive understanding is superior to analytical methodology. I'm saying they work better together, Lisa corrected. Your analysis tells you what should be happening. My intuition helps me figure out what's actually happening. The inquiry continued for 2 hours, with the aliens asking increasingly detailed questions about Lisa's repair techniques. It became clear that they were struggling to understand how someone with no formal training in their technologies could consistently succeed where their specialists failed. Finally, the Vorthon minister asked the question that Lisa had been expecting. Are other humans capable of these same techniques? Lisa considered her answer carefully. Every human I know has fixed things that weren't supposed to be fixable. We do it because we have to. When you don't have the right parts or the right tools, you learn to make do with what you've got. The room fell silent as the aliens processed this information. If what Lisa was saying was true, then humans represented a problem-solving resource that the galactic community had been systematically underutilizing. We will need to discuss these findings with our respective governments, Ambassador Quill said finally. This inquiry has raised questions about current classification protocols for developing species. As the meeting broke up, Lisa noticed several of the aliens approaching Director Hayes with what looked like urgent conversations. She could guess what they were discussing. If humans were capable of solving problems that stumped advanced alien civilizations, then the current labor agreements were going to need some serious revision. Walking back to her workshop, Lisa found the line of waiting aliens had grown even longer. News of the formal inquiry had somehow made her reputation even more solid. Beings were arriving from across the sector, bringing problems that had been declared unsolvable by the best engineers their species had to offer. Lisa looked at her grandfather's toolkit, still sitting on her workbench where she had left it that morning. 3 days ago, she had been just another human maintenance worker, trying to keep the station's systems running. Now she was apparently the center of a diplomatic crisis that might reshape how humans were viewed throughout the galaxy. All because she had fixed a broken machine the way her grandfather had taught her, with simple tools and the willingness to actually understand what was wrong. She rolled up her sleeves and called for the next customer. There was work to do. 2 weeks after the formal inquiry, Lisa was working on a hegemony surveillance drone when the assassination attempt happened. She had been expecting something like this ever since Director Hayes warned her that certain factions were unhappy about humans gaining respect in galactic society. The hegemony represented 12 species that had built their power on maintaining strict hierarchies. They controlled most of the galaxy's military contracts and had spent centuries ensuring that primitive species like humans remained in subordinate roles. Lisa's success threatened that carefully maintained order. The drone was an interesting piece of work, brought to her by a whistleblower who claimed it had been secretly recording conversations in the diplomatic quarters. The hegemony officially denied using such devices, but the evidence was right there in Lisa's hands. Someone wanted her to find that evidence. She was tracing the device's data storage systems when her workshop door exploded inward. 3 figures in powered armor stormed through the smoke and debris. Their suits were military-grade, designed to protect the wearer from everything from energy weapons to toxic atmospheres. The faceplates were dark, hiding the identity of whoever was inside. Lisa Rodriguez, the lead figure announced, his voice distorted by the suit's speakers. You have been classified as a threat to galactic stability. Lisa dove behind her workbench as energy blasts started chewing up her equipment. The tools her grandfather had given her scattered across the floor as the attackers systematically destroyed everything in sight, but they hadn't counted on the line of aliens still waiting outside her workshop. Whistler was the first through the door, moving with the lightning-fast reflexes that made Cathari such effective pilots. Her talons raked across the lead attacker's armor, leaving deep gouges in the supposedly impenetrable surface. The Vorthon trade minister followed, his massive bulk slamming into the second attacker with enough force to dent the bulkhead. Aliens, who had never worked together in their lives, suddenly found themselves fighting side by side to protect the human mechanic who had solved their impossible problems. "Protect Lisa," someone shouted in Galactic Standard, and the cry was taken up in a dozen different languages. The battle was brief but intense. The hegemony operatives had expected to face one isolated human, not a coordinated defense by representatives from 30 different species. When Ambassador Quill arrived with a squad of Altaran security forces, the assassins realized their mission had failed. "Surrender," Quill commanded, his crystalline form blazing with the energy patterns that marked him as extremely dangerous. "You are outnumbered and outgunned." The lead operative looked around at the crowd of aliens surrounding him. Beings who had traditionally competed with each other were now working together, united by their shared respect for human ingenuity. "This won't end here," the operative said as his companions dropped their weapons. "The natural order will be maintained." "The natural order," replied Master Engineer Prism, who had arrived during the fighting, "appears to be changing." The aftermath of the assassination attempt sent shockwaves through galactic society. The idea that someone would try to kill Lisa, simply for being good at her job, outraged species that had never shown much concern for human welfare before. Within days, Lisa found herself at the center of a diplomatic revolution. The Altaran Trade Council formally requested that humans be reclassified from basic laborers to essential technical specialists. The Cathari Merchant Guild offered exclusive repair contracts that would make human mechanics some of the highest-paid workers in the galaxy. Even the traditionally isolationist energy beings issued a statement supporting the creative problem-solving capabilities demonstrated by the human Lisa Rodriguez. But the real change came from an unexpected source. Dr. Maria Santos, a human xeno-engineer who had been working in the Outer Rim territories, arrived at Station Omega with a proposal that would reshape everything. "I've been watching what you did here," Dr. Santos said as she toured Lisa's rebuilt workshop. The station administration had given her an entire deck to work with, complete with specialized equipment for dozens of different alien technologies. "I've been working with alien systems for 8 years," Dr. Santos continued. "But I was always trying to understand them on their terms, using their methods. You showed me that human approaches can work just as well, sometimes better." Lisa looked up from the Vorthak gravity generator she was repairing. "What are you thinking?" "A joint research facility," Dr. Santos said. "Humans and aliens working together, combining our intuitive problem-solving with their advanced knowledge. Not humans trying to copy alien techniques, and not aliens dismissing human methods. Real cooperation." The proposal gained support faster than anyone expected. Species that had been rivals for centuries found common ground in their shared interest in better technology. The facility would be built at Station Omega, with Lisa serving as the Director of Practical Engineering and Dr. Santos heading up the research divisions. 6 months later, Lisa stood in the main workshop of the Interspecies Technical Cooperation Center, watching human mechanics work alongside alien engineers on projects that neither group could have completed alone. The workshop was a marvel of integrated design, with tool systems that could adapt to everything from human hands to Vorthan tentacles. At one station, a human named Pete worked with an Altaran crystal singer to develop new resonance matrices that were both more efficient and more durable than anything either species had built before. At another, a team of Cathari and human engineers were designing adaptive interfaces that could connect any technology to any other technology, regardless of origin. The center's first major project was already making waves throughout the galaxy. The hybrid human-Altaran design principles that Lisa had accidentally discovered while repairing the Star Weaver had been refined and expanded into a whole new approach to engineering. Ships built using the new methods were faster, more reliable, and easier to maintain than anything that had come before. The latest reports from the test fleet are impressive, Dr. Santos said, joining Lisa at the observation window that overlooked the main workshop. 96% improvement in system reliability, 47% reduction in maintenance requirements. Lisa nodded, watching as a young human technician showed an elderly Vorthan engineer how to use a simple multimeter to diagnose problems in complex biomechanical systems. The Vorthan's translator was working overtime as he asked excited questions about intuitive diagnostic techniques. "My grandfather would have loved this," Lisa said. "He always said that the best way to fix anything was to understand how all the pieces worked together." The Star Weaver hung in the docking bay outside the workshop, now serving as both a test bed for new technologies and a symbol of what cooperation could achieve. The ship was faster and more capable than when Lisa had first repaired it, upgraded with systems that combined the best innovations from a dozen different species. Ambassador Quill approached, his crystalline skin reflecting the warm light from the workshop. Over the months, he had become one of the center's strongest supporters, helping to coordinate research projects and secure funding from the Altaran government. "The hegemony has formally requested admission to the Cooperation Center," he announced. "It seems that their recent military setbacks have convinced them that the old ways of thinking may not be adequate for future challenges." Lisa smiled. The hegemony's military doctrine had been based on technological superiority and rigid hierarchies. When they found themselves facing ships and systems designed by integrated human-alien teams, their advantage had evaporated quickly. "What did you tell them?" Lisa asked. "That they would be welcome to participate," Quill replied, "provided they were willing to learn from species they had previously considered inferior." Through the workshop's windows, Lisa could see the next generation of mechanics and engineers already at work. Human children and alien youngsters learned side by side, their differences in biology and thinking patterns becoming strengths rather than barriers. The universe was becoming a more interesting place, full of solutions that nobody had thought to look for when everyone stayed in their separate corners. Problems that had seemed impossible were being solved by teams that combined human intuition with alien knowledge, creating innovations that neither group could have achieved alone. Lisa picked up her grandfather's toolkit, now displayed in a place of honor near the workshop entrance. The simple metal box had started a revolution, not through any grand plan or political movement, but simply by being used to fix things that needed fixing. She walked back into the workshop, ready to tackle whatever impossible problem came through the door next. After all, every machine had a solution if you were willing to look hard enough and think differently enough to find it. And now she had the best partners in the galaxy to help her look.